I'm going to tell you if Section 8 is a good investment for you. I have done it the right way. I've done it the wrong way. And let me tell you something. There are things that people don't think about. They don't consider that can totally derail a Section 8 investment because everybody just thinks, oh, it's automatic money. It's going to come every month and I don't need to worry about anything. That's not the case. I'm going to show you the benefits. There's some great benefits, but I'm also going to warn you about risk that you should consider. It's not for everybody. And so stay to the end because I'm going to show you exactly how you can find success with Section 8. But let's dive in. Is it right for you? So what is Section 8 housing? Obviously, it's a government assistance program. I don't really need to go into it a whole bunch. It's rental assistance. It's funded by the federal government. It's administered through local housing authorities. Here in my city, we've got at least two, probably three, I think, housing programs. I've only worked with two of them. So who pays the rent? Well, it really depends. In some cases, the housing authority pays the entire rent. In other cases, they only pay part of the rent. And then the resident is responsible for the other part of the rent. And I'm going to get into that because there are things that you're going to want to watch for before you really say yes to a resident, okay? So, benefits of Section 8. Obviously, consistent rental payments. This is what everybody wants. They want the guaranteed portion of their rent. Now, when the great financial crisis happened in 2008, there was concern, there was thought the government is going to shut off paying that rent. And I want to say it was a problem for a little bit. My 20 years in the business, over 20 years in the business, you can pretty much guarantee that the government is going to pay the rent, which is what everybody wants, right? So you reduce the risk of non-payment issues. Also, there's always going to be a demand for Section 8 housing. I know that there's more people waiting to get on Section 8 than there are vouchers. So a voucher is just something that a resident receives that says they are approved for the Section 8 program. So there's always a high demand. And then in my experience, there's always been longer residency. In other words, they have typically, once a resident finds a property that they like, they tend to stay in it longer. It is a bit of a hassle to move. It's a bit of a hassle to change and to find another property and to get approved and to go through that whole process. And again, federally, Section 8 is not a protected class. So a landlord federally doesn't have to offer the rental properties to Section 8 people. If somebody comes and says, I want to rent this property, but I only have Section 8, the landlord doesn't have to take it. Now, in most states, that just applies. But in some states, you can't discriminate because it's like source of income discrimination is what it's called. So if you're in one of those states, in California, in New York, maybe in Colorado, I can't remember, then these are things you need to be aware of. But Section 8, they tend to move less frequently. All right, challenges of Section 8. Okay, so these are some of the challenges. Stringent property inspections. and no inspection is the same in my experience. You have different inspectors that look for different things. They can be from the same housing authority. As a matter of fact, we had a Section 8 inspector who came to work for us in managing our properties. And I got all of the inside scoop. I just drove around with Wayne and we went and looked at houses and I was just asking him a ton of questions and come to find out there were guidelines, but it was pretty subjective, which means it was really based on what he thought about it. Should it be fixed or should it not be fixed? But I will tell you, every year they're going to come and do an inspection and there are always going to be things that you have to fix. And so they're going to send you a notice and say, here are the items that need to be fixed. They need to be fixed by this date for your property to continue to be on the Section 8 program. And if you don't, then guess what? You're going to lose that voucher and that resident is going to have to go somewhere else. And that's not going to be a good thing. So just know that with private pay, more than likely you wouldn't have to fix those things, but with Section 8, you're going to have to fix more things. All right. And then repairs can delay move-ins. If you get a house inspected and it fails inspection before the resident moves in, you're going to have to go and fix those things. Even if you rehab the house and you thought, hey, this thing is perfect, they come back with 5 things or 2 things or 1 thing, you're going to have to go back and fix it. Going to delay the experience, going to delay the resident moving into that property. Resident screening is limited. Really, it's all they're not, when somebody receives a Section 8 voucher, they're not saying this person is the perfect resident for you. All they're saying is part of their rent or all of their rent is going to be taken care of by the government. You need to do the rest of the screening process, which I'll talk about here in just a second. And then the other challenge is just it's slow. It can be very, very slow, and it really depends on how the housing authority in your local city works, how it operates. Here where I am, they don't even, like, email is such a struggle for them. You literally have to go down to the office. It's insane. You have to go down to the office. You have to stand in line. You have to talk to the caseworker. You have to go through all of that. It's such a pain in the neck. Very difficult to get it done electronically. As a matter of fact, we had a guy who came to work for us, and he was determined to have the entire process taken care of by email. And guess what? About 3 months in, it was completely broken. And we had investors who were giving us houses saying, hey, I sold this house to this person. They want to use you as their manager. And it's Section 8. Well, 2-3 months down the road, the investor is still receiving the seller still receiving the payment. He's like, listen, I'm tired of giving this to the new owner of the property. You guys need to fix this. And it was a big challenge for us. But government bureaucracy tends to slow things down. All right, so let's look at some examples. So I've had experiences where Section 8 was paid, the entire thing was paid by the government. And I've had Section 8 where literally just a very tiny portion was paid, but they were still on the Section 8 program. Now, let's just say market rent is $1,500 a month. Well, Section 8 may say, they don't really care what you're marketing the property for rent. They're going to say this person is approved for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and this is how much their voucher is. Their voucher could be for $1,400. There's $100 difference. You need to decide whether you're going to take it or not take it. All right? The resident may pay $400 of it, and the government may pay $1,000 of it. That's just an example. Could be flipped. Government pays $400, the resident pays $1,000. You just need to understand that going in. Now, the great thing about this, what I think is, even if the government is paying $1,000 or they're paying $400, doesn't really matter. This resident does not want to get kicked off of the program, so they're going to do their best to make those payments, unless something catastrophic happens in their life, some huge emergency. They're going to do their best to pay on time. They don't want to go through an eviction, and they don't want to get kicked off the program. So they're going to live up to, typically what I've experienced, they're going to live up to their obligations when that's concerned. So, but just know they may pay all of it, they may not. They will adjust it for families if somebody has a large family, if somebody has a voucher for a 4-bedroom, 3-bedroom, all of that is going to depend. All that is going to adjust or have an impact on how much rent they're getting. So let's keep going. Now, how do you get your Section 8 resident? And I'm about to tell you I'm about to give you a pretty big warning. I want you to think about. I'm going to talk to you about the things that people don't really consider. But stay tuned. It's coming. So what you want to do is you want to register your property with a local housing authority. And ultimately, you can put your house for rent, and somebody with a Section 8 voucher may come and say, do you take Section 8? Or if you have your property managed by a manager like we are in all the states we're in, then we'll go ahead and tell you. It'll be on that. It should be on the description. Accepts housing, Section 8 housing, or doesn't accept Section 8 housing. It kind of removes the back and forth of do you accept it. But if you're a personal landlord renting it out yourself and you've got one property or 2 or 3 properties, you can say yes or no. Then what's going to happen is they're going to have a housing inspection, right? They're going to come out and they're going to look at your house, and there are going to be things that 100% you're going to need to have. It's going to need to be safe. It's going to need to be clean. It's going to need to be in good working order. Just think about all the things. Like if you have stairs going down to the basement, they have to have a rail. If you have stairs outside going down from a stoop down to the ground, there's going to have to be railing. I'm just thinking of things where they're always like, hey, this has to happen. Windows have to open. So if you have an older home and the windows are painted shut, which happens a lot in these old homes, forget it. You're going to have these windows open. So your handyman or whoever's going to have to make sure windows open. Then what you want to do is you want to go ahead and screen these applicants. Now, the things that you don't really have to worry about all that much, I would say, would be credit history is not as important, and income verification isn't important because they're paying it, right? Section 8 is paying it. So you don't really have to worry about those two things. What you do want to worry about is rental behavior, past rental behavior. Do you want somebody who has torn up another rental property to be in your property? No, absolutely not. Background check. We do criminal background checks. We're not going to allow anybody that has violent misdemeanors or felony in the home. And then I would also look at evictions. Has this person been evicted for anything in the past? I'm just probably not willing to rent to somebody that's been evicted. So you can have your standards, the things that don't really matter. Income, credit history, not as important. The other things still very, very, very important. All right, now here's the beware. Here is what you need to pay attention to. Okay, there's two things that you should consider. Number one has to do with repairs and maintenance. Okay, so if you have a Section 8 resident and they are living in the property and they're having the full subsidy, they're having the full rent payment paid by the government, they may not have a job because a lot of the income or a lot of the amount that the government is willing to pay is based on the income of the person. And so if they don't have a job, they're probably going to be paying more. Now, what this could mean is that the resident is living in your home more, right? They're not getting up and going to work and vacating the property for 8 hours a day, 9 hours a day. They're living in it. So they're flushing more toilets. They're flipping more light switches. They're walking up and down on the carpet. They're eating in the property more. What does this mean? This means there's going to be more repairs and maintenance. So this is something I'm always telling investors. You should be thinking about that. It normally, especially in maybe Class C, Class D areas, the resident is going to be in that property a lot more. There's going to be more wear and tear. So whatever you think you're targeting for repairs and maintenance, I would bump it up. If you had 10%, if you were setting aside every single month 10%, let's say it's $1,500 rent and you were setting aside $150 a month, you might want to bump that up another 5%. You might want to set aside 15%. Just know that there's going to be more issues at the house. Period. So that's one thing people don't think about. Okay, so that's one thing I want you to be aware of. Second thing I want you to be aware of is I'm going to go back to this example right here. So let me go back here, and I'm going to say that you said you wanted $1,500, but the housing authority, let's say they said they're going to only pay $1,400. Well, you want that $100. A lot of times it's more than that. You want that extra, whatever. What if you were asking $2,000 and they were only going to pay $1,400? And the resident came to you and said, listen, I'm going to make up the difference. The lease is only going to be signed for what Section 8 is going to allow. That's all you can do on the lease. So Section 8 has to approve the lease. They're going to look at it. It's going to be approved for $1,400. But if you have a potential resident that says, you know what, I'm going to give you the extra $100 or $400 or whatever. I'm going to make that up on my own. I'll pay you on the side. Do not do it. Forget about it. You can't do it. I think it's against the law. I'm not 100%, but I think it could be against the law. But B, what happens if they don't pay it? You can't do a thing about it. You can't evict. You can't get rid of the person. You can't do anything. If they said, hey, forget you, I'm not paying that. Let's say you wanted $2,000 a month and they were only paying $1,400 Section 8 and you were expecting $600 from them and they didn't pay it. You can't do a thing about it. I would never do that. Just don't ever do that. Just if You just need to make up your mind. If what Section 8 is offering you is good enough, then you need to accept it and don't worry about it. You can't do anything about it. Okay? That's what I would be aware of. The repairs and then the bump in rent that maybe a resident wants to, because they want the house so bad. And they know they couldn't get it normally, and so they want to entice you to take that money. Don't do it. It may be against the law, but regardless, no recourse if they don't pay. So how do you win with Section 8? I think building a relationship with a housing authority is key. I even think building a relationship with the inspectors is key. If you know when the inspectors are going, go there, meet them, look at what they're looking at, talk to them about the repairs. Don't argue with them. Don't fight with them and say, oh, no. Just develop a relationship. Just be yourself. And I'll tell you, I have had friends. I never really did that all that well. I just didn't take the time to go and meet the inspectors, but I absolutely have friends who have done this, and it's been tremendous for them. They've passed, or the inspectors called them and said, hey, I'm going to pass you, but what I want you to do is come back and take care of this. And he would go and take care of that. Build relationships. People are just people. Inspectors are just people. And so I think that helps. And then with the caseworkers, if you're nice and respectful, do the things that they ask, then you know what? It's just people like doing business with people they like, right? And so if you build a relationship and you have a mutually, there's mutual respect, then it's always going to be better for you than if you are seen as like some mean landlord that doesn't want to offer good housing to these people. Like, you need to provide a great house, a great experience, and be kind to these people. Communicate regularly. You'll get faster approvals and support for issues. I promise you, even if you have to go down there because they don't respond on email or pick up phones, whatever. And then other way is really just be known for providing quality properties. So there was somebody in our city who every property that they bought, they put a red tin roof on it. And you would think that, it was very obvious. It was a red metal roof, right? So you know whose house this person has this red metal roof. However, they weren't really known for great properties. They weren't really known for quality housing. They weren't really known as a person that you would really want to do business with if you were in the Section 8 department, if you were a resident, and if you were an investor in town. So they're no longer, this is the thing. In real estate investing, if you don't provide a good product and you're not above board, guess what? You're not going to be in business long. It's just, you can make money fast in real estate, but the way you build wealth is long-term, building a business that lasts, and you can't do that by burning bridges all the time. So my whole point is they didn't maintain quality in their property, and so you knew every property that had the red metal roof, I don't want it. Residents don't want to rent it. Investors didn't want to buy it. So those are just some tips for winning with Section 8. I think that's really, really important. Now, is Section 8 right for you? Some people have their mind made up. It's not for them. Other people are like, I'm only want to rent Section 8. I knew somebody here in town that all they did was rent Section 8. It is great for consistent and reliable income, cash flow. You do need to be patient. It is going to require you to go through extra hoops. That's the trade-off. Am I willing to spend more time and energy to get this thing rented, knowing that it's going to be guaranteed rent and they're probably going to stay in the house a long time or longer time? At the end of the day, you just have to evaluate, does it fit into your investment objectives, right? So if you only are interested in private pay, great, go with private pay. There's plenty of investors who've been very successful with private pay. If Section 8 is your thing and you're willing, it's just really ultimately just this trade-off, and you just have to decide, is that something I want to do? Now, if you have a manager like us who manages properties, then maybe it's not that big a deal. Maybe you're open to having Section 8 because you're not the one going to the housing authority. We're the ones going down there. We're the ones responsible. But still, some of the things apply. the inspections and you having to repair things apply. That's going to come out of your pocket. And then just the time it takes a little bit longer probably to get them rented. You may be able to get a private pay rented quickly, but you have to go through extra hoops for Section 8. Is it worth it to you? Ultimately, that's the question you need to ask. I hope this has been helpful. And hopefully, based on this, you can make the decision or start to make the decision. If we can ever help you, then don't hesitate to reach out. There are some links below this video where you can get in touch with us. We help investors buy, sell investment properties. We manage 23,000 properties around the country. If we can ever be of service to you, we want to do that. And stay tuned. We'll be back with more investor-friendly videos just like this.